and welcome to the IEM Sydney 2019 closed qualifiers. The first of many. We're here for the European region. I'm Elfish Guy, this is Pilly, and wow, first time casting CS for me this year, Pilly. I think it's the same for you, and I'm pretty excited to get stuck into this.
Yeah, always excited, especially with the European region. It can be such a roller coaster to see which one of these teams is going to come through a qualifier, especially for for such a big event coming up like Sydney.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it feels kind of crazy that we're already back at IEM Sydney.
Yeah.
I can sort of even remember back last year when we were casting the qualifiers, even casting IEM Sydney, and it doesn't feel that long ago, but we're here once again, and you know, we haven't even kind of finished the major off, which is still yet to come, but we're already thinking about IEM Sydney. So I think, like you said, the European region, definitely one that we want to keep an eye on, definitely a big spotlight on that region. We get a lot of strong teams through from there, generally speaking, to IEM Sydney. So a nice place to start things off for us, I think.
Yeah, I mean, personally for me, I'm always thirsty for more CS, and I become more so when you're coming up towards the major, so I always just want to watch more and more qualifiers and get a sort of better gauge for how some of these teams that may or may not be playing at the major are going to come in form-wise towards the Katowice major coming up, as well as how well they can go qualifying for other premier events.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see on the screen there very briefly all the teams that were in the qualifiers. We'll have a look at the bracket in a second as well. A few names that you probably expect to see in those qualifiers, a few names maybe that you don't expect to see. I think the results of the bracket so far are going to surprise a few people, because there was, obviously the 4 invited teams that you, generally speaking, if you invite teams, you expect them to be the ones to go through, and by and large, they actually haven't been the ones. Obviously, we've got Big, we've got G2 still involved, but Hellraisers and North already been eliminated.
Yeah, Europe's been crazy lately. You're seeing like the rise and fall of a lot of big names, and you're seeing some of the young guns like your Valiances and even some of your CIS teams come up there, like your Forzas and stuff like that, come up and have some big results. I mean, even so, we're seeing right now deep into the qualifier, 3D Max have made quite a run for themselves. They haven't gone down swinging too hard. If you're talking about losing a series to Big, they still take one map. They've been performing very, very well, already taking down their opponents of G2, who they're going to be taking on in this lower bracket final.
Yeah, and also North as well. Definitely some names on North. Like, I think actually looking at the entire roster of all the players in this qualifier, the only player that actually has played at IEM Sydney is Kiebi, who's on North, and obviously we're not going to get to see him again this time with North being knocked out. Like you said, a lot of interesting results here in these qualifiers. I mean, especially to me, 3D Max going this deep. I mean, they've been doing relatively well recently, but when you look at the players on some teams like G2, North, the sort of the legends even of the Counter-Strike scene that are kind of being knocked down a couple of pegs recently, it's kind of an interesting time when it comes to Counter-Strike. We're seeing, obviously with the exception of really the top dogs like Astralis and etc., a lot of movement where newer teams, newer players are starting to come up and kind of make a bit of a shuffle happen.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a few question marks in terms of you're talking about your 3D Maxes, your Valiances even. Before that, you had Imperial and stuff like that. Teams that were always able to put up big numbers and even get some upset wins in these online qualifiers and online leagues against some of these, mainstays in the Counter-Strike scene. And the only question comes after that is how well they can go if they're actually going to make it to either a high-pressure match in a qualifier like this, which is what you're seeing for 3D Max. They have to take out G2 and Big for a spot at IEM Sydney. That's no small feat in the first place, but even if they make it through an online qualifier like this and towards the LAN event, then how well are they going to perform compared to the teams that they may have beat out in a less pressured setting? You're talking about online versus LAN?
Yeah, I mean, speaking of LAN, all of these teams are really searching for their first opportunity at IEM Sydney in particular. Like, we've seen a lot of teams come over, we've seen quite a lot of players, we've got quite a bit of variety, but for the majority of these guys, I think IEM Sydney is kind of a little bit of an exception to the rule when it comes to a lot of events. A lot of events in Europe, in North America, everyone's kind of been to Europe and North America at this point. Even CIS region, a lot of events over there, but IEM Sydney is its own thing, right? There's only one event in Australia. A lot of players always like coming to Australia because they've never been to Australia. It's definitely a different thing for everyone to kind of come and experience. So I think there's that little bit of, not pressure, obviously, but there's that little bit of extra want maybe to come to an IEM Sydney as opposed to another event. It gives you a bit of a different experience compared to a lot of the other IEMs.
I always feel like it'd be a bit of a roughie for a team like 3D Max to qualify for an event like IEM Sydney. You're talking about a team that, maybe they've had a little bit of experience at the minor, maybe 1 or 2 to sort of smaller tournaments like your DreamHack, your smaller DreamHack tournaments in Europe and stuff like that. But if you're talking about, hey, we're going to be coming to one of our first premier events and we're going to have to, travel however many hours it is all the way down to Sydney, and it's like playing your first premier event on hard mode. So that's why I always feel like, especially when it comes down to an event like IEM Sydney or any event that you have to travel pretty strenuously for, it's always going to favour sort of your teams that are more used to playing a rigorous land schedule and travelling and doing all the kind of things that the top pro players usually do.
I mean, you say that, but there's also the argument that these guys that are always on the road, for them then to have to go for that extra, maybe even double the amount of time travelling, can be like 30 hours to get from Europe to Australia in some cases, or from North America to Australia in some cases, if you have to do sort of transfers and that kind of thing. So for them then being on the road and then being on the road that extra amount maybe is going to affect them a little bit more even than players that are sort of playing at home a lot more. So your likes of 3D Max perhaps versus, let's say, for example, Australis, right? They're always going to events. They're everywhere all the time. Versus a team that doesn't go to events that much, and they're going to have a little bit more downtime, perhaps. There's a little bit of argument either way there. But I think it's definitely an interesting thing to think about when we do get to IEM Sydney. There's a lot of different things about IEM Sydney compared to a lot of other events. I mean, even when we talk about the atmosphere within Sydney in the crowd and that kind of thing, that's always sort of quite quote-unquote famous. I don't know if maybe that's what everyone else thinks, but maybe I'm just a little bit biased being an Australian from Australia. I think our crowd's pretty good. So there's lots of factors that go into IEM Sydney, I think, that make it special, and I'm kind of glad that we're now starting the road toward IEM Sydney again in 2019. But it's very, very early. I mean, obviously we need to kind of see how the major works out and that kind of thing as well. So lots to play around with, and such an early start for IEM Sydney that I mean, right now we're just waiting to kind of see who's all going to be invited and that kind of thing. Like, there's not everyone's been announced, so lots of qualifiers, lots of teams.
A lot of big teams already being announced and stuff like that.
But it's just. It's kind of like the golden goose right now. We don't know what's going to come. We've got the little egg. We're waiting to see what's going to pop out and flourish. And last year was pretty good. We had the 16 teams. This year, who knows what we're going to get? I mean, we had, what was it, FaZe last year that won?
Yeah, I think, and that was like one of the only times they beat Australis over the entire year, and that was like such a series. I just remember that one going absolutely crazy. Guardian went ham, and all of the maps went to 30 rounds or something, and it was in the best of 3 in the final. And
they'd also lost to Greyhound.
Oh, yeah.
In the group stages of IEM Sydney. So, like, that's just...
I mean, I personally, like, I love Australian teams, and, I would never say a bad word about any of these fantastic Australian players. But personally, I think this Sydney can only be better because of the quality of teams going there. Last time, I think we had, like, so many spots for the Oceanic region, which is great to see them develop and stuff like that.
There was 3 for Oceania and 3 for Asia. And now I think it's 2 and 2.
Yeah, and so, I mean, hopefully, I'm personally hoping for more top-tier teams and more teams that is, sort of the top 10 coming towards Sydney and making for a better land, because it's nice to see a lot of, regional competition, but let's be real, on this, southern part of the world, or, I mean, Asia's not in the southern hemisphere, I guess, but the APAC, some of it is, but like, your APAC region and your China and stuff like that, we're not really up there in terms of the standings and in terms of making for a quality tournament and quality games. I would rather see more, quality European teams, especially maybe a few of the better North American teams like your NRGs and stuff like that, making the trip down.
Well, NRG was here last time, but speaking of the better European teams, let's have a look and see what's coming up for us today. Pilly, maybe you're going to be excited to see one of these teams coming through to our tournament. I think at the moment it's obviously quite easy to say you'd expect maybe it to be big. They did come through from the upper bracket. They have that 1 map advantage in the best of 5 series, which is coming up later. We've got the lower bracket final to start things off. And I definitely think Big is in pretty reasonable form, especially in comparison to a lot of the players, a lot of the teams rather, in this qualifier. It's kind of been a little bit wishy-washy within maybe the Tier 2 European scene.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's interesting to see 3D Max make it this deep. I would have to agree with you that I'd have to go with Big if I was going to say who's going to take the spot, especially with that 1 map advantage. You can play around with the vetoes even more so for them, but it's always good to see 3D Max getting in the mix. They always seem to make it pretty deep in a lot of these qualifiers. You always see their name coming up on the HLTV, whenever you see a qualifier, and you see them progress further and further through it. I mean, they had a pretty decent series against Big before, like I said, taking a map off them. They've actually already defeated G2 in this qualifier once in a best of 3, and now they're going to have another crack at them. So should be interesting. It's always interesting to see the same best of 3 unfold the second time around in terms of is someone going to change the vetoes, or have you sort of caught them off guard by having a really good half here or there, whereas previously, you know, you might play T-side on a map and you have a really good streak of rounds, which makes it a 12-3, but is your T-side actually that good, you know, the second time around?
I think it's been a pretty interesting qualifier. Obviously, the matches haven't really been streamed, but you look at some of the results and you see, you know, a lot of 2-1s, a lot of really close maps. So right now, to me, it feels like these qualifiers kind of could have gone either way. Speaking in particular of the 3D Max and G2 game, and thinking about the vetoes, as obviously we're going to get there shortly, Train, Inferno, and Cache were the 3 maps that actually came out in that series. And I was a little bit surprised, actually, to see that, because Train, I thought, was a map that we maybe didn't expect to see G2 on, but was their pick. So they ended up winning that. I think they maybe pulled something new into the wheelhouse here. Inferno was relatively close. I mean, 16-7, 16-10 for the last 2 maps that 3D Max did win. Close enough that you can say, okay, it wasn't a whitewash. It wasn't a complete another stomp there. So I'd be interested to see what kind of things come out of this new veto. Are we going to see Train, Inferno, and Cache here again? Are we going to see G2 go back to something like the Dust 2, the Overpass that we see them like to play quite a little bit more often than not? Are they going to change things up because of the fact that they've lost this series, or are they going to go back and say, okay, we've learned from our mistakes, we know what we did wrong on these other maps, on Inferno and Cache, and we know how to fix it now, and we can kind of put that into this next series and beat 3D Max at their own game, essentially?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, it's always hard to sort of judge whether you want to be like, well, are we going to justify the fact that we lost a map to this team as them being better than us on that map, and therefore we'll have to veto it, or we'll have to sort of play around the fact that we're going to have to potentially play that again in this second best of 3, or are we going to just sort of look at it not results oriented and say, you know, oh, this or this happened, and we can look back on that and go forward and still play the same kind of maps, and this time we'll do better.
All right, well, let's see if you're going to be right, if I'm going to be right, if we know what we're talking about or not. Let's see what the vetoes are going to be here. Nuke and Mirage, the 2 bans. So neither of them obviously impacting the previous series. Inferno to start things off, the pick of 3D Max, which was the same as last time. Dust 2, that's a change up. So Train taken away, or not taken away. This time it's going to be G2's pick of Dust 2, which is interesting because Train was what they won, but it was 16-13, so fairly close, but maybe going back to a little bit more of a comfort pick. So interested to see what this final map is going to be. Train taken away, Overpass taken away, which will leave us on Cache. The only change up in this series is the Train for the Dust 2. The order a little bit different, but realistically speaking, I don't think it makes too much of a difference.
I mean, it shouldn't make too much of a difference, really, because you look at it, it's the same 2 maps that G2 had the potential to win on previously. I mean, the difference being is that the G2 had their Train or whatever as their first map, which they were able to take, and then 3D Max went and reverse swept them. This time, the maps are a little bit more broken up, so maybe the momentum can be a little bit more broken up, where you see sometimes, you know, one team has a very close first map, like, you know, your Train went to 16-13, and then you sort of get a pretty one-sided game in the second, and then the other team that has taken that second map can then carry that momentum through to the third map and win that fairly handily. I didn't really watch the previous game between these 2 teams, so I'm not sure if that's really the case or not, but sometimes that's how it can feel, you know. One team, if they've taken a map and they feel like they're pretty confident with how they've gone ahead with that second map, they can complete the reverse sweep fairly easily. But this time, you know, if G2 is still able to pick up their map win, granted it is a different map that they picked up from last time, it can sort of break things up a little bit if 3D Max is still able to pick up Inferno. And I mean, they've already seen 3D Max's Inferno once, and Inferno can be that kind of map where you can't really play at the set. Like, if you have a specific way that you like to take banana control on the CT side, if you know, lose a couple gun rounds to that on your T side of Inferno, like they aggressively take nana control off of you, and you're not able to adapt to that in your, like, T side the first time, once you've seen it the second time around, you might play that T side completely differently the second time and get a lot more rounds.
Yeah, 100%. So it gives you the opportunity, have a second crack. I think you'd be feeling pretty hard done by, though, if you're 3D Max, right? You win that first series, come into this one, you lose this series. You kind of essentially gone 1-1 in terms of series in the qualifier, but you've kind of lost the one that really counts more. This is the real match that matters. Obviously, the upper bracket, you'd love to win it. You'd love to go through to the upper bracket final, but end of the day, you still have a second chance if you lose the upper bracket. If you lose in the lower bracket, you're done. So this is an elimination match and also a progression match for both teams. And only one team can go through from this qualifier as well. So for whichever team does actually win this match to go up against Big later on tonight as well, or this morning, wherever you are. For us, it's this morning. Tonight, I don't really know. But that's, I think, a long day. You know, you got your best of 3, and then you got your best of 5, which you is essentially, for you, it's still a best of 5, right? You still have to win 3. For your opposition, they only have to win 2 with that one map advantage. So really long night for both of these two teams, so we'll see how they go. Interested to know what you think is going to come up here, though. Do you think G2 comes back into this and takes the victory? Because, like, I mean, you look at the players on G2, there's some really, really good players on that roster that have been around for a long time, and it's kind of hard to go past players like that when you're looking at this, even though we know that they've lost to 3D Max, and it was, I would say, a reasonable victory for 3D Max. It wasn't like it was a super close result there for G2. I really find it hard to bet against the kind of players that G2 have got.
Yeah, I'd kind of go the opposite. I mean, I'm assuming that with what you've said, you're going to go for G2 and you're feeling pretty confident they're going to come away with this one?
I wouldn't say I'm confident. Yeah. I wouldn't say I'm confident.
What's your percentages? What's that, like a 60-40, 65-35? What are you feeling?
I'd say probably 60-40 at best, 55-45. I think it's really close. Like this one, you know, there's obviously the previous result to kind of take into account, but then my general feeling is like I always like to go with the players that have that experience in those really tough matches, and players like Kenny definitely have that, players like Shocks, etc. here for G2. So I'm definitely thinking that, you know, the caliber of players on that roster definitely have the potential to win this match.
For sure.
Obviously, the same can be said for 3D Max. We know that because they've won that match, but I find it hard to go past players like those two.
Yeah, the old favourites, you know, your classic French duo and all that kind of stuff.
Maybe I'm living in the past a little bit too much, you know, like back in the day, right?
Yeah.
But it's hard to say. I guess you're going...
I'm going to go for 3D Max. I think that this isn't a high enough pressure game to really get to them too much. I think they're going to compose themselves well enough. They've already beaten G2 once in this qualifier alone. In general, their form online has been reasonably impressive. They tend to, you know, do fairly well in these online qualifiers, and even if they're playing up against a better team like G2, who, let's be real, their form hasn't been as great as the roster's potential is. Thus far, I think that 3D Max can still come away with it. They've got two maps that they've already beaten G2 on, and they should be feeling pretty comfortable.
Yeah, 100% would not disagree with you, especially looking at the vetoes as well. I don't think 3D Max is going to be disappointed to be seeing Dust 2 straight off the bat, but maybe not so happy after seeing that body really starting off nicely. Good headshot, getting rid of a 1 and a second as well. Looks like this might be a difficult pistol round for 3D Max if they aren't able to bring things back pretty quickly. Bomb making its way into A. It's a 2v3. Haji almost able to get a headshot across, but unfortunately, this looks like it might be falling by the wayside a little bit more quickly than 3D Max would have liked, as Haji in a very, very difficult scenario. A nice headshot, not going to be enough. And fairly solid stuff from G2. Nice start for Body, and a nice clean-up for the rest of G2.
Yeah, he really did fantastic work on that pistol round there. You can see that 3D Max, they threw, you know, they tried to go for the bracket control pretty quickly there with the Glocks. They threw the smoke into Arch and tried to wrap the A site from Tig and Jungle as well, but Body really breaks up the momentum of that push. Once you drop 1 or 2 Ts and there's a fair few CTs still alive on the bomb side, it can be pretty difficult to continue with the same force and momentum than you would have if you got 1 or 2 clean Glock entries in there. So here comes the save for 3D Max. Just going to take, 3D Max.
Yeah. Nice little peek just there for G2. You see Kenny getting flashed into mid, trying to find some info. Not really spotting too much out. And they've also taken control of Inferno, Banana, I should say, as they are able to rotate that extra player across to the A bomb site. 3D Max playing really, really slow, waiting for G2 to use up all of that utility early on in the piece and maybe try and make some magic happen with these Glocks. So, unfortunately, not much chance, one would assume.
I mean, grenades are money, so the longer they wait, the more money they expel. I'm already getting mixed up with the names that now Lucky and Jax are playing for G2, and I'm like, 3D Max. These names are names that I'm used to seeing under
3D Max, Jax
banner.
Yeah.
It's 2 of these guys used to play on that team.
A little bit of rivalry then, perhaps, for all of the players in this matchup. Lucky is having a go with the USP, not seeing too much, not finding too much damage. But like you say, a lot of investment into this one from G2 in terms of the utility. David will cop a couple of bullets in his direction, but very, very slow round out from 3D Max, and I think that's fine for a round like this, you know, keep G2, you know, not necessarily waiting, but at least don't let the round kind of fall by the wayside. You know, make G2s think, make G2 use some of their utility, maybe give away some of what they want to do, like those pop flashes into mid, that kind of thing, and eventually the round is going to go the way of G2, we would expect, but enough has been done by 3D Max to maybe not necessarily unsettle G2 here, but you know, just keep them a little bit annoyed.
I mean, that's a win. I mean, if there was 5 players for G2 alive, which kind of sucks. It doesn't really force too much of a reinvestment if you're talking about buying a gun and armor once again. But G2 was forced to use all their nades into the late round there, and only 1 or 2 SMG kills. The rest were cleaned up with the FAMAS from G2, so not too much extra money bonus. Money should be fairly stable for G2 moving forward here. 1.5k plus on all of those CTs, and utility is so important on the Inferno CT side. Jax gets absolutely nailed right off the start of the round, and Maka gets some damage exchange. Looks like he's going to put a fair bit of pressure on Brackets pretty early on in the piece here. I haven't seen too much of this myself. The quick smoke towards jungle as well as the molly into the dig area. Banana control also taken by 3D Max. So this is a lot of map control, a lot of pressure to be putting on G2. You're going to see them start to run out of utility fairly quickly here, I would imagine. And it's only at the 1 minute 20 mark here, Jordan.
Yeah, definitely a little bit different of a round there from 3D Max. Much quicker, able to take control of the important areas of the map that they now do possess. Banana, I mean, top mid was even being pressured for a moment there. The one saving grace for G2 is at least they've been able to do quite a bit of damage across to 3 of the members of 3D Max. You know, Devil down to 82 even still is going to be a one-shot headshot for a few of those guns.
This is a great spot for Shox to be in a round like this. You can almost bank on the fact that 3D Max, their first gun round, they might not have a Molotov to flush out that new box position, so Shox can get a free kill for himself.
Well, here comes the push from 3D Max. A few flashes, not going to really problem Shox at all, as Devil does go down. Lucky playing the off angle, trying to wait for that peek, and he'll get a bit of damage, but not enough to dispatch of Haji, who is still going to survive on 4 HP. The rotation coming across right now. Jax leading the charge. Has been spotted out. Be careful. Nice stave from Bonnie. Turns it into a 3v3. Still winnable here for G2. They start to push their way in. A lot of damage done, but no kills that really matter. 2v1. And Jax go down. Nicely done from 3D Max into that B-bomb site quickly. Catching G2 off guard. And kind of puts G2 in a weird economic position here.
Yeah, it's probably going to be the single save for G2, I would imagine, rather than the force. There was 2 alive from 3D Max, though, so they could potentially try to go for some kind of weird buy, but they won't do it. I prefer the more sensible approach of just saving. Really felt like that round was a bit of a snowball. You saw 3D Max, they went out really quick at the start of the round in terms of just putting the pressure on with the utility, really trying to go fast for that Brackets. You saw Devil very quick up Banana there, taking control of the map and really forcing the pressure on G2 in terms of the utility.
There's a nice pink. Marker down low. But again, that banana control for G2 has been left. Jax just gets absolutely domed. Not much he could do about that one. Fully flashed. Nice trade from Body at least, and that is going to be an AK in his hands. Something to play with here, with Marker still down low as well. That's going to make life more difficult for G2 though.
3D Max just going to rotate back towards the banana. They feel pretty safe over this side of the map. G2 in for the quick rotation. Body could do the damage here.
He certainly could. Doesn't have any armor, but if he can keep hitting headshots, it doesn't really matter too much. Still a minute on the clock for 3D Max, so they do have time to rotate off if they would like. Spam through the smoke here from Body. Might just dispatch a Marker and turn it into a 1v2, which would definitely be better for Body. At this point, just trying to play very sneaky. Gets tagged as well, which is really unfortunate. Needs every little ounce of HP in this if he would try and win the round. So there's a player close, and we'll get rid of Marker. Still 2 players to fight. This would be an incredible clutch from Body, and it's unfortunately not going to come for G2. But a bit of damage done from that round, so I think G2 can be relatively happy with that.
Oh, it definitely would be. Look at the money on 3D Max. Their money on the T side has been kept relatively low because they just keep losing guns right and left up against G2. You know, that round previously, the first gun round where G2 had a lot of SMGs and FAMAS, that was really the difference maker I felt in that round. Once they were really limited on the utility, they threw what utility they could at that 3D Max push into B. But after that, you know, you're running 5 AKs against a FAMAS and a UMP. What can you really do if you're the G2 players and you don't have any info on Bracket? You can't over-rotate because you don't have the info. Bit of congestion on Nana here, but what a flash.
Great flash is not going to result in the kill, and in fact, Shox dealing with Devil. Another couple of kills going the way of G2. They've gotten control of Banana top mid, being pressured by 3D Max. I guess to an extent, David's still putting pressure onto Banana, but this round is definitely looking a lot better for G2. The individual starting to step up here. A couple of nice flashes from 3D Max, not going to be enough to get them through this round. Short of a nice clutch from David and Marker.
Yeah, 3D Max are really fighting for that banana control. But he doesn't quite hit the timing here. Does he? An easy frag for him. David P's just left on the brackets. Gonna have to have a pretty impressive clutch for himself. Not going to be.
Well, big change up there for G2, putting 3 players toward Banana, not something that we've seen just yet up until that round. Also having the AWP on Kenny S. So starting to see the wheels in motion now on that CT side for G2 when they get that bit of extra money in their bank, when they get all the utility, when they get the AWP. It just looks like a completely different round.
I mean, let's look at it. The first gun round, like I said, they really had lackluster weaponry, and that one even came down very close with 2 3D Max players surviving and very low HP. Now they've got much better weaponry. They've got the utility flowing a little bit more. That last round, I mean, you saw the utility being exchanged back and forth between the CTs and the Ts in Nana. I really feel like Devil, he had a very short window with that flashbang to be able to make something work, and since he didn't really hit that timing, they weren't able to get too much done. But after that, you know, as Ts, if you don't make that window work, you kind of got to be happy.
Keep pushing for the info. Really dangerous here. Needs to get back into the side, and will. Backed up nicely by Shox, who grabs 2 before going down. Center, he's dropped by Lucky and just needs to survive as long as he possibly can here as the rotation starting to come across. Jinx gets flashed. Nice work from G2. Great teamwork. It's just Marker left alive. That round was a little touch and go for a moment for G2, but now looking a little bit more solid. Marker eliminated by Kenny S. Nicely done with the AWP, still keeping himself involved. 4-2. Tables start to turn a little bit. It seemed like it was pretty even. In fact, it almost seemed like 3D Max was in an advantageous position when we were at 2-2, but now G2 really seems like they've got a pretty quick stranglehold of this game.
Yeah, it really feels like 3D Max is trying to force the issue on Banana quite a lot. Like, the utilities being exchanged back and forth between the T and the CT side, and G2 is putting so much utility. They're investing so much util in the earlier parts of the round on Banana to really try and make sure they have control of that and they strangle it off of the T side and make sure that they really have to work for it if they want control of that Banana. It's only been once in the first gun round with the lackluster weaponry that 3D Max was able to easily take control of that. In other situations, it really feels like, as the T side, if G2 is going to invest that much utility, I feel like you can kind of trade the util back and forth, and once the CTs don't have too many Molotovs, too many smokes and stuff like that to really fall back on, they kind of have 2 options. You rely on the crossfires in the bomb site, or you have to kind of get aggressive in the mid round like we've seen G2 do a couple of times already. They really try to disrupt how 3D Max is playing once they get that banana control. Even in that last round, it looked like 3D Max, they really wanted to set up that B execute, but
they couldn't.
G2 was just prodding and poking. They were kept flashing back into banana and re-aggressing.
Yeah, it was a case of timing as well there for G2. You saw they had the AK lined up on that angle, waiting for the push. It didn't come, and as soon as they dropped the AK down, then the push came out from Shox. So really nicely timed from him, and it works out very well for G2. They're going to face up against an Eco now. Big push through the smoke. Kenny S will back away, drops down the incendiary, takes the secondary angle. Nice flick, in fact, from Kenny S. This might be a day for Kenny S to have a bit of a ball, because he started off well. Every single round he's been having an impact with the AWP. A couple of nice headshots out from the pistol there as well. I'm getting some good vibes, at least from Kenny S at the moment.
Definitely looks like he's doing fairly well for himself. Should be interesting to see in a few more of these gun rounds whether he can have that impact that he just had cleaning up those pistoling players trying to charge at him through Arch and take the AWP out of his hands. It's not going to be having any of that.
Well, he hasn't really died too much at all, has he? He's got, what, 3 deaths there, I think?
Yep.
Now taking a peek into Banana, so changing his position up as well. Really nice to see. He's looking sharp today, Pilly. This is definitely dangerous for 3D Max if they don't find a way to shut down that AWP. Kenny S is going to be able to run wild all across the map. As you can see, has happened in the last couple of rounds.
So again, G2 has been really aggressive on Banana. Lucky's going to push even further and pick another player over towards that bottom Nana area. But you see the rotations come out from G2. What started off as 3 on Banana has now turned into 4 on the A side.
Yeah, no, very quick, nice rotations out from G2. You can really feel the difference that these last few rounds have shown us between the two teams. 3D Max almost floundering now. Every single round that we see, it gets kind of worse almost for 3D Max. You know, some of the rounds were close, and now Kenny's getting that opening pick. Kenny's getting the 3K, obviously, against an Eco, to be fair, but still, you know, it's still looking more and more difficult for 3D Max. They need to find a way quickly into this first half, otherwise G2 is going to start to run away with Inferno. And we know that 3D Max did win Inferno in that last matchup between the two teams, so if they're not able to win it here, then that really begs the question what they can do then on Dust 2, which is not their pick.
It really feels like Banana's starting to be a little bit of a liability for 3D Max. Every time that they really try to go and take control of it the exact same way every time, they're really trying to force the issue up there. G2's just getting the better end of the stick. This time, 3D Max, lots of pistols and armor, a handful of smokes. Seems like they might have something particular in mind here. G2 and Kenny S once again, really disruptive, not letting them set up what they wanted to do.
Come on, look at this body, just lining them up. It's a firing range. Absolutely brutal from G2 Esports. Kind of getting some good, like I said, good vibes from Kenny S. You know, you've got to go harking back to the good old days of Kenny S when he was undisputably the best AWPer in the world.
It really feels like 3D Max is playing quite hesitantly at the moment. They're sort of second-guessing themselves a little bit with a lot of the things that they're doing, and it's giving G2 the time to really aggress and take the initiative in this game, and they're really punishing 3D Max for that hesitation time and time again. Be interesting to see if 3D Max is going to start to recognize either the patterns of utility that G2 is throwing at them and whether they're going to adapt to that. But just as I say that, G2 is giving them a completely different look. You see Kenny, he's just passive towards that CT, ready for someone to overpeak. Devil very hesitant taking that banana control right at the start because he's been punished for it time and time again, but it's a passive hold on that B bomb site. And look at all the utility that G2 is holding on to at this point. They're just playing passive towards the bomb sites. They know that they've been pressuring 3D Max and that 3D Max is going to be hesitant to take map control, and if they do so, they're going to use a fair bit of utility doing it. And G2 is just playing the long game this round. They're holding on to all their grenades. 3D Max is using all their grenades to take map control that's being given to them freely in the first place.
So much confidence out from G2, and that's what happens when you're up 7-2. It's a bit of a case of win more. The snowball coming into effect here for G2. Oh, I say that now, but the round is not yet won. Still a lot of work to be done. 5v5, they haven't got that opening pick like they have earlier. That's at least an advantage for 3D Max, but time is starting to tick away here, and now we finally start to see the utility thrown out from G2. Body, what can he do? Not a lot. He gets taken down by Jinx. Jax with the trade. Lucky another one as well, but Devil through the smoke, able to dispatch of Lucky. Nicely done. I don't know that Shox is still on the side here, though, and this is going to be potentially the linchpin of the round. If Shox can come up big, if he can deny the bomb plant, even if he can just get 2, that's more than enough. And he's grabbed both, not to mention the bomb as well. Devil in a 1v2 now. The tables turn once again back in the favor of G2. The Molotov just for the insurance. Shox has no idea where he's coming from. Won't get that third kill. I don't think it's going to matter that time. Not quite going to be enough for Devil to plant the bomb. Kenny S will save. No, he won't. Yes, he will. Just. What a round that was.
Yeah, I don't really know how I like the approach from G2, but you know, they waited out all that utility. They held onto it into the late round, and then in the late round, once 3D Max went for the bracken control again, they try to be disruptive, but it's in a bit of an awkward situation. You see, Body was actually fighting under Porch there, and Lucky was just trying to spray through that jungle smoke to sort of support him. And lucky that Shox was in such a good position on the bomb site, because that really felt like it was going to be a 3D Max round.
Got 3 orgs out for G2 right now. Even though it feels like it was going to be a 3D Max round, it wasn't. G2 up 8-2 now. This is not looking good at all for 3D Max. Again, so much money on the side. What are you going to do about that, I guess?
I mean, just look what his name is. Pretty much says it all.
Yeah. Might get another one here as well, and he does. Peak coming out from Maka, and this is just org domination. Shox chiming in as well. And that is going from bad to worse for 3D Max, really. At this point, it just seems like they cannot get anything done. The last round, yeah, it was close. This round, complete whitewash the way of G2 Esports. We're back to square one. 3D Max is going to have to take an eco or a force buy here at best. And G2 just continue to build their bank.
Yeah, it is going to be the buy from 3D Max. Their money loss bonus is really building up quite a bit at this point, so they're doing pretty decently in terms of buying AKs. Maybe if you got the Deagle and the Mac 10, but not the worst buy I've ever seen in my life.
19-5 right now for Body. I don't think he's concerned about what 3D Max really has in their back pocket. It's not doing too much anyway. Great flash in there for Shox. He'll get a 2K, maybe even the third if he spams through that smoke. It just is not working at all here for 3D Max, and you can see the confidence that is now really filling G2 Esports as they push straight through mid, putting 3D Max on the back foot again and again and again. And 3D Max now, they can't even feel safe in their spawn. Jinx, they'll try to clutch it out, but it's not going to be enough. 2 players still alive for G2 Esports. A comfortable round in the end. 10-2.
And again, another different look. They go charging down mid. They take the the aim duels down banana without even smoking the bottom of it. Every time 3D Max is thinking about, oh, what did G2 do one round previous? What did G2 do a couple of rounds ago? G2 does something completely different. You're even seeing 3D Max, they just look like they're completely mentally out of this game at this point. You're seeing people getting killed with their knives out, running across the map, and you know, that's not a case of people just not paying attention or intentionally trying to die or anything. It's because you simply don't expect someone to continue to go for multiple frags, to continue to play so disruptively.
Yep.
You know, you're used to being in your sort of practice mode or whatever. You played, you know, hundreds of scrims on Inferno, and every single time you're thinking, oh, I throw this grenade and this is how player X is going to react usually. I'm not expecting a player to pick me in this position, but you know, G2's playing with the supreme confidence. They're playing the disruption game right now. It reminds me of the Fnatic in their prime era. You know, just go continue to peak and re-peak and don't let the other team play their game whatsoever.
Well, they've just slowed down a little bit this round, G2. They know that they're up against that pistol buy, so not doing anything particularly over-eager. Using a bit of that utility to keep 3D Max at bay, but playing those long angles, a very smart round out for G2 Esports, still keeping 3D Max guessing. Every single corner you peek here as a T is going to be one that you expect to get shot in the face by an AWP, and they'll make their way in toward the A bomb site. Be covered off by Body, actually going around the world, and that's not going to work out nicely at all. Body just holding the angle with that scope, easy as you like. 3 kills on the AUG once again, and he's up to 23 and 6. First half is going phenomenal for him and for G2 Esports. 11-2 now, and it just does not get any better for 3D Max, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Is this a case of GG go next already? Like, is that too early to call?
It really does look like they're mentally out of this game. They haven't taken another tack just yet. They really haven't found an answer for anything that G2 is throwing at them whatsoever. The one round that they took was, you know, when G2 had a bit of a lackluster buy, and even that was quite a close one. They've never really put the economic pressure on G2's CT side to stop, you know, Kenny getting his hands on the ult. Not that he's needed it, the way that Body's playing. He's out of his mind at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, not even just Body, like everyone is fragging right now for G2 Esports. It's just that they seem to be running toward Body more often than not. Kenny's got a nice angle here, and he'll hit the shot as well. Great stuff. Great reaction times. And Jack's in the meanwhile as well, able to chime in with one. So from 5v5 straight away into a 3v5. Nice entry from Marker, but straight away traded out by Kenny. G2 Esports, it's looking too easy for them at the moment. And this will be their 12th. David in a 1v4. Can't expect a lot from him. But who knows? Jax knows.
So last round of the half here for 3D Max. This is the kind of round where, more often than not, I see the T side snag a bit of a free round with the CTs getting a little bit too sloppy. They're in steamroll mode, and 1 or 2 mistakes can lead to a bit of a snowball where the T side can kind of get a free round if someone's just over peaking or one too many players is running down mid or banana, but we'll see if that is going to be the case. Kenny's just going to flash mid for Body there. Doesn't take anything out of it. This time Nana control taken by 3D Max fairly quickly here. See if that really causes many rotations. G2, the way that they're playing at the moment, they're really trusting Shox and Jax to hold on to this B bomb site more often than not. Here's the aggression on the port side. One player boosted up. Kenny's going to AWP boiler from below him. Dear Lord, Shox, how have you found yourself in this position? The smoke's being exchanged back and forth.
Oh, I don't know if he can get back now. Not safely anyway. Needs a flash or something at the moment. Not too keen to, and Devil's made a bit of noise there. Bit of a bait, perhaps. Shox gets peeking in, taken down, and it's all unlucky.
Look at G2. They haven't budged a single bit. All of them are still pit and carb side. They're like, if you're going B, you're going B. Best of luck. Like, they just don't move, any of them. There's no rotation. Oh. And look at 3D Max is just rotating back towards the A bomb site. You know, Jax might be getting a little bit antsy towards the Moto site, but there's still 3 G2 players on this bomb site. How would you expect this for 3D Max?
Yeah, utility going to be going in there for 3D Max as well to deal with, so wasting even more time. Rotation does actually go across from G2, so there is that one small saving grace at least for the T side, but Kenny is still on the site alongside Body, the 2 guys that have been fragging up a storm around the world by the looks of things here for 3D Max, so at least the rotation will have an impact. Jax needs to be very careful, knows that CT is dirty, backs away into construction. Take that second angle, and meanwhile Kenny S does drop. It's going to have to be a hero play from the B site players for G2. 9 seconds, they might not have time to plant the bomb. Jax, if he gets rid of Devil, he would have won the round. And Body, in fact, on the rotation, will win the round, as there's no one covering off Banana, well enough at least. Just hit the defuse. I thought that they didn't get the bomb down, but they did. So he doesn't win the round.
The amount of times where I see a 12-2 half where the team that's getting puddled pulls out the third round.
Yeah.
I almost never see 13-2s. I feel like it's
That's
always
true.
a 12-3.
That's true. Oh, man. Well, it could have very, very nearly been a 13-2 there. Buddy, if he was half a second earlier, which I thought he was, but in the end, I mean, a 12-3, I think you'll take that any day of the week as a G2. And I think it's something I was maybe a little bit worried about here for 3D Max. You know, like I said, you look at the players on this G2 roster, and any of those guys can really just have an absolutely enormous game. And we're kind of at that point now where G2, the ones that have that experience, just absolutely steamrolling. And we'll see if that continues into the T-half. Doesn't always work that way, you know. It's always a tale of two stories. Maybe the T side not going to be so great.
I mean, G2 is absolutely on a heater right now. They don't pretty much need to fall over to win this game at this point. You know, 1 or 2 T-gun rounds, bit of misspent economy on the CT side, and 1 or 2 people not having the incendiary grenade that they might have needed. And it could be the game.
Could be.
G2 now, they're taking banana control. Actually, David P, how aggressive was he down second mid-apps and then the frag exchange back in mid? This is a bit of a messy round here into a 4-on-4, but G2's still got the util to hand.
They've got the shots as well. The Glock train working quite nicely. Devil binked up there as well and eliminated pretty quickly. B-bomb site completely in control of G2 Esports. Shox locking down Banana as well, doing damage, getting kills. What can you do at this point as 3D Max? The bomb goes down onto the B site. David P is not having a good time right now.
He surrendered. He's Belgium, so it doesn't count.
Yeah, that's true.
Alright. So, I mean, T-Pistol on top of that, I'd be feeling a little bit sad if I was 3D Max, especially. I suppose, I mean, one thing that you can say is that if you do want to get back into this game, I feel like as the CT side, a force buy's on the cards in the next round because, let's face it, lads, like, here's your options. You force buy with pistols and armor and the same utility that you would have got in the next round. Anyway, if you had got, you know, an M4 or whatever. Oh my god, he doesn't even get that one. Or in the next round, you can have an M4 a smoke and a flash. Or in this round, you can have a CZ a smoke and a flash. Really doesn't feel like, as you would say, much of a muchness to me.
You want a CZ?
Yeah, I'm down for the force buy. It's the only way they're going to get back into this game at this point. They need to get a bit of a break here because, let's face it, they're kind of getting pummeled into the ground.
Yep.
If you take a win with these pistols, you can potentially...
Maybe have a couple of AKs go through next round.
Yeah, you can upgrade some weapons. You can sort of cheat your way into a half-decent economy, which is really what you need at this point. You need to start to get that economy rolling, potentially have money for a double AWP in the future, have enough money to be able to hold on to enough utility to stop G2 from just rolling you over.
Well, this might be a nice start. Devil with the deagle. Body on 54 HP, so there's a chance here. Smoke goes down, G2 just backing away.
Yeah, so the rotations are coming in from the CTs because the first smoke has been expended so early. 120, G2's already forced out one smoke. You're seeing Maka. He's coming in from the jungle side with an extra smoke to be able to throw that on. Now Devil's going to chuck his out. So they're just slowly bleeding the utility out of 3D Max. G2's very aware that this is a common thing on Inferno. So many choke points you can use the smokes on that force buys with pistol armor and a bit of util is very common on this map. This is a difference maker though here. Maka, he's coming with the extra smoke. He's going to drop that and G2's going to be really cutting it close. They're going to be starting to run out of time if this third smoke is expended by Maka at the correct time.
Doesn't look like it's going to be. The creepers come out for G2. Maka just needs to throw it now. But he's still holding on to it, and they might get put in the ground as a result. Punished, absolutely. Maka goes down. Shox and Kenny S getting the entries. And that is the B-bomb site, well and truly in the favor of G2. There was 10 or 15 seconds there where if he would have thrown the smoke, it potentially could have been a round winner. 3D Max, but G2 get the bomb down, and they have a 3v2 in the position of Kenny S. Definitely an unexpected one. This will be another round for G2.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's hard to judge if you're Maka in that situation. Smokes last 18 seconds. You got 30 seconds on the clock or 35 seconds. In my mind, you drop that smoke right there and then. And if G2 is forced to go through the end of that smoke, they've got, what, 15 to 20 seconds to be able to clear the bomb site completely and get the bomb down in time before, you know, your 3-second counter or whatever. You've got a couple of pistolers in close quarters that can make that entrance into the bomb site nice and messy. Maybe you've got 1 or 2 guys dancing around new box or coils at the right time, and you could potentially stop that bomb plant, and that's your round right there and then. But you know, he's trying to make it too much of a sure thing, just holding on to that smoke for a little bit too long, that if you know, he feels like in his mind, if I drop this at maybe 25 seconds, they have to run through the smoke no matter what, and then we can 100% win, rather than the, you know, 95% or whatever else you want to call it, where, you know, you're worried about
them coming in with 10
them
seconds
coming
left
in and just blowing all your heads off.
Yeah, I guess it's a risk versus reward, and in that case, the risk didn't pay off for 3D Max. I mean, you maybe I can argue that you have to take risks to come back from a 3 to 13 deficit. Another force buy through for 3D Max in this round, but how much longer this map is going to last really does beg the question. G2 Esports looking far too comfortable right now, and especially heading into a map like Dust 2 as well. As we head onto the A-bomb site for G2, I think there's definitely some problems ahead for 3D Max in this series. But nice shot from Marker. See if that makes much of a difference, as it does bring it back to a 3v4 at the very least. Still need to ask for a little bit more damage out from him, and that is not going to be the case. The Mac-10 proving to be too much to deal with. Bomb's still not planted on the site though, so 3D Max at least have some time to rotate across, but I think it's wishful thinking at this point for 3D Max.
Yeah, G2 looks like they're in firm control of this game and they're not going to let go. Looks like, Jordan, you may have been a little bit more sensible on the predictions, but I mean, we still got a couple more maps of CS in us. And I really do have to say, to my credit, okay, G2 are really good at beating other French teams, alright? I saw them versus Vitality and WesG, where they're able to win that game as well. Like, if there's anything G2 can beat, it's the other French teams, to make sure they're the best French team, or whatever you want to call it. You know, if they play another opposition, though, maybe things get a little bit sloppier and difficult for them.
Yeah, let's not bring up Renegades versus domestic competition either in that case. But G2, you know, they did lose the series after winning the first map in the upper bracket when they were playing a couple of days ago. So I guess you can argue 16-13 on Train in that case. So definitely a little bit closer and a little bit more to sort of take away from that for 3D Max. For this one, there's absolutely nothing to take away for 3D Max, apart from saying we have to completely reset heading into this second map. At the very least, 3D Max is not a terrible Dust 2 team. You know, they do play it a little bit. They don't mind playing on Dust 2. So there is that to take away. It's not like they're going on to a permaban or something like that, which in fact was Train, to be fair, prior to the last couple of series.
That's a classic. Just run up mid and AWP the jungle player 5 seconds into the round.
Why not?
I don't really think that's going to help them too much. Something tells me.
It's not going to help 3D Max at all.
No.
RG's getting full control of Banana at least, but if he pushes the smoke here, he may have a rude awakening. Flashbang comes through. It's actually going to be G2 that has the rude awakening. He'll get the smoke down as well. Nicely done from him. Good grenade in. There's one more for G2, which there is not. Could have been problematic for him. Only to clear out the balcony. Still full control of Banana, and finally the player starts to rotate back. No, Haji still hanging around. 2 players on A. Tough to hold here for 3D Max, I think. Yeah,
just the lackluster weaponry is really going to be the killer here for them. These flashbangs better be real mint coming out from these 3D Max players. Macca's going to have to throw an absolute banger for Jinx here in the pit, because otherwise I think it's going to be pretty difficult for them to hold this one off.
All right, now he's more than content to just sit and hold the line. 30 seconds, G2 really keeping 3D Max waiting. Absolutely no utility.
It's a classic because, oh my god, Shox, you're really going to go up there by yourself with the bomb? Nope. Oh, and he doesn't peek.
That could have been the round, Devil, if he would have peeked.
He doesn't know that though. But it still is the round.
Oh well, there's 17 seconds. The bomb, at least in the mid. It's still retrievable for G2. Kenny needs to hit a nice shot. They're winning the round, but they're not going to win it fast enough. G2 just put in a poor position. Shox lining up a smoke, I think it was. They're not going to be able to clean it up here and now. It's not going to be the 16-3 that we expected. What a weird round that was. Okay, 3D Max survive. But a lot of money for G2. So how much does it matter? How much does that one round really matter?
I feel like that round was the classic where G2 is just like, they're so far behind, they're bound to make a mistake, right? They have to take a risk to get back into this game, whereas I feel like 3D Max, they're at the point now where they're just like, whatever, man, like, I'm going to sit in this position, and if I have to come out, I will, but if I don't have to come out, you know, that's fine too. Down with whatever. It's aggression from Shox, and that's the timing you got to be hitting if you were Devil last time. But there, Shox doesn't hit it either, and he gets double peaked. Oh, the rate of grenades.
Artillery strike, really, from 3D Max.
I mean, you're the World of Tanks caster, so I'd say, you know, being the expert in that.
Not anymore, mate, not anymore. Let's put that by the wayside. Let's keep that where it was in history. Well, 15-4. It's going to turn into maybe 15-5 here as G2 in a precarious position. Jax has an opportunity to lurk in onto this side and maybe do a bit of damage. Where does that leave Body? It has been pretty phenomenal throughout this map so far. Information being gathered by Jinx, and if Jax holds this line for much longer, he's going to be spotted, and is. Okay. Easy as you like. Let's see what Body can do. 1v3 now. Does have HP, does have utility. Just needs to get rid of David. Could have planted the bomb, but not the case this time. So, they're left wanting still for G2. And they'll have to take an eco as well.
Yeah, look, if you're 3D Max at this point, this is where you start to work your way into the series. It's not about winning Inferno anymore. This is about, you know, I'm going to get my aim in. You know, we were coming back in that last one. You're taking the momentum off of G2's little hot streak that they've had as a burner into this game. Because you really have to say, like, it's like you said, a lot of them are quite sharp at the moment. They're playing quite well. Body's having himself a hell of a game. But, you know, you talk about consistency over a larger sample size of rounds. It's something that we haven't seen as much from this G2 team. Have absolute heaters like this in other competitions. So, you know, sure, it can happen, you know, for a string of 1/2 or 10 rounds or a little bit more or something like that. But if 3D Max stretch this out, if they make G2 really have to work for this win and start to take some of that momentum away, moving into Dust 2 could be a different story.
Absolutely. That's where the sort of doubt starts to creep into your mind for G2. If they would have finished this at 16-3, they're almost at a sense where you could consider like, okay, we've almost won the series, right? You go into Dust 2, you start off well, and that's basically done and dusted. 3D Max are mentally out of the game. But it's not going to be the case now, even as we get to, at best case scenario for G2 16-6, 3D Max have been able to come back in. They've been able to find a few rounds there. It's not the momentum that they would have wanted, but it's at least stopped the momentum of G2.
Yeah, and it really does make a difference because if you start to have some good rounds, if you start to win some duels here or there, you start to get your game working for you, it can really start to make you feel like, hey, I can get back into this series, I can start to play my game. But if G2 never gives you the opportunity for you to start to get yourself into the series, for you to start to get yourself warmed up and get your confidence going, if they never give you that opportunity, then you'll never know what that feels like heading into Dust 2. You'll never know, you know, can I start to play well here? Do I have, you know, what it takes in this series, or is this just not our day? But if you can start to make a 10-round, you know, sort of comeback or get 9 rounds in a row and slow down G2, then maybe there's a better chance on Dust 2.
This is interesting from Kenny S with the bomb. Doesn't want to be peeking through that smoke too much longer. We'll back away. Pressure being put onto Banana, being put onto A right now. Both sites a little bit wary right now for 3D Max, but Maka with the AWP.
I like this.
Just taking a bit of an aggressive peek. Smoked off, pushes through it. That's a lot of info for 3D Max.
It's a bit of false info, to be honest, Jordan. Like, they're seeing nothing in bracket. What do you think? What are you saying if you're like, oh, there's nothing in bracket? Sure, you've heard one guy burning in Boiler, but you have no info on Banana. You can't expect all of G2 to be in carpet right now, and you would never go aggressive on mid if you're Maka then if you think that they're not coming A.
Well, the Molotov's going to force Jinx out of position as well, and I think this might finally be it for G2 Esports. It's taken a few more rounds than they might have liked, but bomb goes down. 16-6 is a pretty good scoreline. I'm sure they would be happy to take that one. Lucky, keen to push through this smoke. Decides not to, and we'll go down to Devil. Always a chance here, even in a 2v4 for 3D Max to make some magic happen. They have some utility. The flash goes in. Now, left without it. It's going to be just on the aim duels. Haji gets 1, evens the numbers slightly. Devil dropped. So too is Haji. That'll be the end of the map. And realistically speaking, no surprises to see that one cleaned up by G2 pretty comfortably. 16-6 in the end. Philly, I mean, at the start, it looked like 3D Max, you know, first couple of rounds that they won, it was like, oh, okay, we might have a game on our hands here. But then G2 straight away, Body, Kenny S, absolutely destroying the entirety of the first half, and I think it was always a matter of time really before they finished off that first map.
Yeah, that was the individual firepower edge really shining there for G2 on a map like Inferno that 3D Max was able to take off of them in the last series. And you got to say, I don't know how much that really shows itself for the rest of the series. You know, we'll see how things go on Just 2. That was G2's pick, which I mean they won Train in the last series, which was their pick. Let's see if they can continue to win their pick up against 3D Max, and if they can do that, then that's going to be a 2-0. But you did say 3D Max play a little bit of Dust 2. I mean, they managed to get themselves into the game a little bit in that map, but I mean, you can sort of justify that if you're 3D Max. You can sort of say, oh, look, Body had an absolutely excellent game. Kenny S was playing pretty well. Let's see if we can try to get into this next map and say, you know, how often is it that these players are going to have such an explosive half as they had in the previous game?
Well, I mean, if they can do the same, I think Dust 2 is definitely a map where, you know, you have those explosive individuals. They're really just going to be able to take that game away from you. So I would be a little concerned sitting in the 3D Max camp.
Yep.
You definitely need to kind of go back to the drawing board, I think, in the 3D Max. Take whatever time it is. Maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it's 10 minutes between these two maps, and kind of figure things out, because that is really not what you would have expected. You know, having already won a series against this team as well in this particular qualifier, you know, it's not the start that 3D Max would have wanted, especially on a map that they, I will say, fairly comfortably won 16-7 last time. It's a complete turnaround, and this was what we talked about when we were looking at the vetoes. Was it going to be G2 Esports going with the same sort of a strategy going in? Are they going to go for the same veto strategy, or are they going to change up the vetoes significantly enough that we see a completely different series? I don't think that they have. I think that Train, pretty straightforward sort of swap for Dust 2. Aside from that, they've learned what they did wrong in Inferno, and they're going to use that as their way to beat 3D Max today.
I don't think G2 have ever been that sort of, you know, out-veto you sort of style, unless you're talking about the iterations with existence in it or whatever. It's always been sort of, we're going to play better next time, or we're going to adjust smaller things.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we saw today. I mean, again, we can't really say because we didn't get to watch that other match, but the result there definitely does sort of completely flip it on its head, 16-7 versus 16-6. And in this match, this is the match that's more important, Pilly. This is the knockout match. This is the match that qualifies 100%. You through to that upper bracket final. Again, a difficult game against Big, of course, regardless for both of these two teams. But I think that's really the perfect start for G2 into this series, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, they absolutely thumped them pretty much, I mean, harder than G2 were able to do in the last time, or 3D Max were able to do the last time they played on that map. So.
All right, well, lots of questions to be asked here for 3D Max. We're going to take a quick break, guys. We'll be back, though, with map 2. Don't go anywhere. Dust 2 coming up.